BTB listeners, thank you so much for checking out today's episode. Listen, if this episode inspires you, do me a favor and take 5 seconds to shoot me a like and subscribe to the podcast. There are several more exciting guests that are in the pipeline, and I just can't thank you enough for your continued support, and let's keep paying the mission forward. Let's get into it. Episode 29 of the BTB Project. Today's guest is a firstborn American whose parents came from Romania. Before going to college, she had an outstanding junior tennis career, winning 3 national titles, which included 2 silver balls in doubles play and a bronze ball in singles. She received a full-ride tennis scholarship to Vanderbilt University, earning second-team All-SEC and SEC All-Tournament Team honors. She represented the school at number 1 singles and number 1 doubles as a freshman, and it was ranked top 75 in the ITAs. Following that season, she transferred to Baylor University, where she was a 3-time Big 12 Conference champion, helping the Bears to a top 25 national ranking. After a standout college career, she began her coaching journey, where she was the head coach at Weatherford College and Georgia State University, and now she's the head women's coach of Queens University of Charlotte. Alex Leatu, welcome to the BTB Project.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby.
Welcome to the BTB Project, designed to empower listeners to identify their why and to live their best lives no matter the circumstances. My name is Coleman Gerhardt. A former athlete and motivational coach, I've had the opportunity to inspire thousands through my story and help accomplish what they are built to be. You'll be encouraged by each and every episode, and let's get into it.
Yeah, when I blow up, I'ma soar high like Peter Pan. In real life, be living out my dreams. If I'm waking up, it's in a foreign land.
It's always a joy for me to reconnect with influential people in my life. And I just remember back in the day, the talent you were as a tennis player, but more importantly, just the person that you are. And seeing now what you're doing as a college coach and seeing how your players play for you and how you motivate your team. The listeners today are going to take away so much wisdom and value for what you bring. And with that, I'd like to introduce my first women's tennis coach on the BTB Project, Miss Alex Leatu. Welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Coleman. So happy to be here.
There's so much to unpack, one, with your journey, but two, the leadership that you have led with for these past few years as a head coach. And I just want to dive right into that first and say congrats on another amazing kind of start to, your path as a coach and continuing to impact lives at Queens. And I would just love for you to speak to how you ended up at Queens and what you're looking forward to with the upcoming season.
So Queens came out of the blue a little bit for me. I was at Weatherford College. I started that program there. And my relationship at the time was long distance. And of course, the plan was to at some point find a place that brings us, together. And we're both in college athletics. And he's from this area. And I got a call actually from the Queens athletic director to see if I was interested in the job. And here I am. Went on an interview and it worked out, just clicked, and God played a huge role in that one.
That's right. It's typically how he likes to play the cards, no doubt. And, when it comes to the previous college, was that located in the Carolinas as well? Or could you maybe walk us through the logistic change you made?
There have been a lot of changes. But the previous school, Weatherford College, is in Weatherford, Texas. It's about 30 minutes west of Fort Worth.
Okay, excellent. And, obviously I knew you from your past life in Colorado, and I'm not up to speed, and the listeners I know will be intrigued by this, but it's always a tough transition to see some players make that jump into coaching. And everything I've seen with you, and even the kind of small things I've heard from players that have played for you, have absolutely loved you as a coach. So can you maybe just speak to what that transition was like for you to get into this? And was it always on the horizon, or was it something that you kind of developed over time?
I've always been so passionate about tennis, and I've never been able to picture my life without it. My college career as a player was not the easiest.
Yeah.
And that was the root of why I wanted to become a coach. I wanted to be the coach that I needed at the time, and especially as a female leader and mentor for female players. I think there are just not many out there, and that's changed a little bit, but that's been that's kind of been my mission to lead with empathy, to kind of set an example for women and young women who are going through that transitional period in their college years. Those are really difficult years. And when you're in a toxic environment, that doesn't really set you up for a lot of success afterward. So, as a player transitioning into coaching, it was difficult because I was trying to find my voice and my style of coaching a little bit as I jumped into a head coaching role at a D2 program. So already I'm leading a program, and it's a different level that I wasn't accustomed to. So it was just a lot of adjustments I was thrown into, and I wouldn't have changed that for the world.
Yeah, the importance of coaching. I mean, we are glorified seed planters in people's lives. And it's interesting to me because your passion and why of what led you to be into the coaching role is very similar to me. I didn't have the greatest high school coaching experience. I remember kind of sharing my goals with my coach, and he looked at me like I had 10 heads. And then unfortunately in college, I had 4 coaches in 5 years. I played a 5th-year red shirt after an injury, but nonetheless, that inconsistency of coaches was challenging. And I mean, here we are though, talking about a sport where my program actually at University of Northern Colorado just got cut about 3 years ago during COVID, both men's and women's tennis. So I think being a coach and having the opportunity, I believe the opportunities are going to be less and less for the sport of tennis, unfortunately. Maybe speak to, what it means to still have that opportunity to fulfill that passion, and what is really your ultimate goal at Queens?
My ultimate goal is to prepare young women to be as successful as possible in the real world. And I think every step that we take in developing our culture to do that will allow us to find success on the court as well. I think everything's so tied together. The little things that you do day in, day out, the way you talk to teammates, the way you talk to coaches, there's just so many intricacies in team culture that I love, and I'm never complacent. I'm very self-critical as a person and as a coach, so I'm always trying to do things better and different. And I know one way might not work for one group of women one year, and the next year it could be completely different, and I have to adjust. And that's the beauty of coaching, just being able to adjust and see the needs of your players.
Yeah, I definitely get a sense from you, Alex, that you are very not only self-aware, but you're probably hyper-aware of environments and how to keep good energy in a team environment. It actually reflects back to a quote that you shared in your podcast that you were doing back in the day, and it's around leadership, and it talks about a cave. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And some of those things that you maybe experienced as a player and as you were transitioning into coaching, where you kind of had some self-doubt about, how you were going to approach your leadership style. Who were some mentors or other coaches or people in your life that helped kind of shape who you are today as a coach?
There are three people that really stand out. The first person's my father, and he coached me until I went to, we moved to Littleton, and I started working with Frank Adams.
Yep.
He's changed. He had changed a lot throughout our journey as like father-daughter, coach-player relationship. He always understood when he made mistakes, and he was able to correct those mistakes, and he was always looking to be better for me, and he was completely selfless. Obviously, as a dad, it's a little bit of a different dynamic, but he showed me what it means to coach with tough love, and that's part of how I coach too. The second mentor would be Marco Mattiucci.
Okay.
He's the men's head coach at NJIT.
Okay.
In New Jersey.
Yeah.
He was the volunteer at Baylor, my final year there, and he was just so different. He's such a different sort of coach that I never had. So calm, just like this, straight line. He got emotional for positive things, but he was always talking to me about law of attraction and just different things that took you out of the tennis space.
Yeah.
And it allowed me as a player to see the big picture on things. And he really helped me with my transition. And I'm just happy for him where he's at as well.
Absolutely.
And then the third person that comes to mind is Alistair McCaw. He's an author and performance coach, has worked with a ton of players and college teams, different sports. He and I met like at a conference in Atlanta and kept in touch. And then he worked with my team at Georgia State. But, you know, off the court, he's such a good friend and inspiration. And he always tells you what you need to hear, even though sometimes it's not ideal.
Yeah, I picked up on something when you were sharing the mentors and influences on coaching styles, and I want to ask you about it because I think one big misconception about coaching is that it's not always about forehands and backhands or the tennis piece, as you said, right? Mm-hmm. And I've been in high school coaching now for, aging myself here, but almost 17 years. I'm an assistant coach now, but nonetheless, I spend a lot of time when I do have those interactions during a match with a player and talking more unrelated to tennis, talking outside of tennis, because what ends up happening is sometimes there are certain players that when they focus and they're hyper-focused on trying to, you know, create a result-oriented outcome, right? Or a particular strategy that's very specific to an outcome, that they're no longer present. And I spend a lot of time just more on the emotion part and the self-awareness part, because you and I both know that if a player is on a court and they're not self-aware, it's very hard to talk them out of that. But maybe can you speak to your coaching style? I know that college you can be on the court and, you know, say things or do things during the match, but where have you had some success knowing how your mentors have influenced you and paying that forward to how you coach?
When it comes to on-court things, delivery is huge. If you deliver a message in a calm and respectful way that's clear, short and clear, it's always so much better. And I've had experience with players from other teams come and talk to me, like, because they see I'm close with their coach. Can you tell coach to shorten up his coaching spiels? And I'm like, can't help you with that one. You know, I think there's a time and place for long conversations, and at practice and during matches, I think short, concise messages are key. And when you're closer to players and you are clear about the standards and clear off-court meetings about what they need to improve,
Mhm.
then there's no questions being asked. There's less, there's less complications. There's less inconsistent communication. It's just a better relationship all in all. And that's definitely key for me. And that's something you learn as a coach, and it takes some time. That you can't just be perfect at it. And emotions play a huge role because players aren't perfect. You're not perfect. So there are moments they don't want to hear you talk.
Nope.
They don't want to listen. And you have to know when to let them be and when to press. And that's a big part of coaching women also. Just more emotions at play.
Yes. And I recall you sharing kind of 10 things that you've learned being a student athlete that can cross over into coaching and into life. And just for fun, I know that you know these, but I'm going to read all 10 because I think that they're very important. But I would love, based off of where you're at today, you wrote this a little while back, a couple years, but I would love to hear which one of these you're tapping into the most right now with your players. Okay, so I'm going to read all 10, and then I'm going to have you tell me which one comes to mind that you're hitting on right now. The first one is get better every single day. The second is prove them wrong. Third is work on your weaknesses. Fourth is execute and practice. Fifth is learn from greatness. Sixth is learn from wins and losses. Then you got practice mindfulness. Be ambitious. Believe in your team. And learn storytelling.
I would say execute and practice is a big one. And then the next one's practicing mindfulness. This past year, those were the two big things we focused on, funny enough. The girls, every day before practice, I write the practice plan on the board, and in the group text, I send them like a link to 5-minute meditation. So whenever they come down to the courts, they have their headphones in, close their eyes, and have that 5-minute meditation, because those few moments between class and going to practice, what you do in those moments matters. And I think having a clear mind entering practice has helped them a lot. That's
powerful because, before we hopped on this episode, I talked about my son, and, he's in high school, and obviously I've seen the rigor that he takes on as a student athlete. You see student athletes all the time in college, and I'm just curious, when it comes to kids transitioning from high school to college, that you're taking on and making that adjustment and the mindfulness piece. Do you see kids in 2023 having a harder time with that? Or do you feel like it's becoming something that kids are getting better with that transition?
They're getting worse because things are just so quick and accessible to them, and they get bored. Being bored is an epidemic right now, and they feel like they have to fill their time with things because things are a little bit easier. They come a little bit easier. And so spending time on something can get annoying for them. So making it a routine and a ritual and a team standard, I think, help them, improve in that aspect. Because at the beginning, a lot of them, I would say 2 or 3 really struggled with it. They couldn't sit still. They couldn't relax. And at the end, they were all just zen. I would walk down and see them on the benches just relaxed. Yeah,
I've been diving deep, Alex, into my own self-help and trying to find ways to, kind of remain calm in stressful moments. And a lot of it comes down to breathing, as you mentioned. Saw something interesting, a gentleman by the name of Jay Shetty. He has a really powerful podcast and great influencer. Spent some time as a Buddhist monk, and the thing that resonated with me was kids in the Buddhist culture, the first thing they learn before the ABCs is how to breathe. And I find it ironic that kids today, or high school or college, young men and women, the first thing that these people do when things get stressful is they stop breathing. They seize up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting how they're always looking for an answer to how to prevent that, but the answer is something pretty simple. Meditation, self-awareness is not a complicated thing. It just is that ability to be vulnerable enough to let yourself do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
I think that is a tremendous strategy you're using with your team. And I know that you mentioned mentors. I would love to backtrack a little bit to your parents from Romania, correct? And tremendous athletes. Your dad was an Olympic bobsledder. Your mom was a national champion as a gymnast. I mean, the lineage that you grew up in is unbelievable. So I would love for you to speak to, I know you talked about your dad being a coach. I just would love to hear you speak to your parents and how they've been an impact to your life and your journey so far.
They have had the biggest impact. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. And their journey as a couple was extremely difficult. Being really great athletes, they were able to get into the University of Physical Education and Sports in Bucharest.
Yeah.
And so there you have to be proficient in every single sport to be able to graduate. So,
Wow.
They had to learn the intricacies of strength and conditioning of every sport, how to play the technique. So it's like all encompassing. And so that's how, my dad really loved tennis growing up. And then he got to do that when he was in school and learn more and loved the sport.
Yeah.
But when my dad started traveling with bobsledding, it was, during that time he was finishing up school and they went to compete at the World Cup in Italy before the Sarajevo Olympics. And they got third place there. And they were in taxis going to the airport. And my dad told the taxi driver to not follow the taxi in front of them. And so they defected in Italy, him and two other guys on his team. And they were in a refugee camp there for 8 months. The U.S. came through, the bobsled federation there, helped them get visas, and they had to find sponsors though. So it was tough for them, but they made it here. And my parents were apart for 6 years and they only wrote letters, random phone calls, and they stuck it out. And it was a huge inspiration for me. Like when I'm trying to find the right person throughout life, it's hard when you see their journey and commitment. And, I grew up in low income housing and Steamboat. Like it was very difficult beginnings. My parents were working 2 jobs each. My grandparents came over when I was born also. So they took care of me while my parents worked. And my dad, he was teaching the local Steamboat kids at those 2 public courts at House and Hill. And
not even the indoor tennis center, huh? Where the Aragons hung out. He wasn't there. He was on the outdoor courts.
Some random public courts. And when I went out there one day and with my mom, and he was finishing up with the kids, and he started just tossing balls to me, and I didn't hit it, but I made over the net, but I made contact with the ball, and that's how I stuck with the sport.
Well, I remember your contact with the ball all too well because I was the recipient of receiving some of those hits and serves down the hill in Littleton, Colorado, where I can't quite remember how our paths crossed, but I know that you were near the King Carroll Valley area and you were just looking for people to hit with. And At the time, I still had something left in the tank after a college career and a few back surgeries. But nonetheless, I do remember very well, and please, just full transparency, is I've seen a lot of people hit a tennis ball on the women's side, and you were one of the best pure ball strikers I ever seen. I got to spend time at a tennis academy in Arizona where I worked with a lot of international players, and then I spent a brief stint at Saddlebrook in Wesley Chapel, Florida. Hit a few times with Jennifer Capriati, and Alex, your ball was just fantastic. So whatever your dad was doing with how he was feeding it, or maybe because the ball flew so fast and Steamboat, like, you picked up the game and played the game at a very high level. And I would just love to have you speak to that transition down the hill to Littleton. And I know at that point as a junior, you're kind of stuck between this rock and a hard place, because Colorado tennis, it's very hard to develop. Mm-hmm. It's very challenging to go to an Intermountain tournament and have success, and then go to a SoCal tournament and lick your wounds, right? So I would just love for you to speak to the listeners on how you developed your game in Colorado as a junior.
Well, technically, my dad's coaching was very sound, and he was right on the money with a lot of things. And even with my players, I teach them a lot of what he taught me, and it just works. And the footwork as well, huge. And in Colorado, where the ball's coming so fast, you got to optimize your footwork from a young age. Yes. And transitioning and moving to Littleton, my dad knew I needed more help, and he didn't have an ego. He just wanted me to have the best. And I went to zonals in Omaha and met Frank Adams there. He was one of our coaches in 12 and unders. And so my dad called him up, and I started hitting with him, and he was phenomenal coach for me, and helped me really jump in Intermountain for a few years. And then at clay courts, I was 13. So a couple years later, we just tried out this tennis academy with a friend of mine, and it was Nick Saviano's tennis academy.
Gotcha.
And I was there for a couple days, and we were on our way out, and Nick caught my dad before we got in the car, and he asked him what his plans were for me. And he said, "You need to bring her back here." And so that's when I started going to that academy. And Nick really helped me just jump in terms of confidence, understanding the game better. And really, you can't beat the group of players I was around. Every day I was hitting with Sloane Stevens, Laura Robson, Mallory Burdett.
Wow.
Jeannie Bouchard, Monica Puig. Like, that was our group for 2 years. And it's amazing what an environment like that can do for you, and just having someone to just constantly go against and get better with, and iron sharpens iron. Yeah. And that's what comes to mind whenever I think about my time there. It was financially so stressful for my parents. And, these girls, they were, I think, in a little bit different situation than we were. I was there two weeks a month. I wasn't full time. So whenever I was in there, I was playing a tournament, or I was with Frank, and I became homeschooled at this point, and just, it was a grind, and eventually couldn't afford it anymore. Tried nukes out in San Antonio for a while. Just was not the right fit for me. Yeah. I quit tennis. I remember I came home from there. I was getting so much worse and depressed. I just wasn't enjoying it. I hated it. And
what age were you when you came to that?
At that point, I was almost 16.
Okay.
At this point.
Because I remember I met you just a little bit before that, And
Yeah.
I, at the time, was a head tennis coach at a high school in Littleton called Chatfield Senior
Yeah.
High. And, here I am starting my coaching journey at 22 years old, coaching high school girls tennis. And going back to what you were saying with coaching, women and the emotion part of it, I really had the ultimate test of understanding how I can be the best support in those moments, right? But nonetheless, we had a tremendous team. I think we were top 3 in the state in 5A for Colorado. And I had an opportunity to have a few discussions with you about high school tennis. And I know ultimately you made the decision to continue your training and to not play high school tennis. But I'm just curious, since we're light years after that, knowing what you know now as a coach and knowing the importance of a team and just developmentally, you see some folks that play high school tennis that can go to college, have a decent college career, and then go on the tour. It's possible, but I'm just wondering, what was high school tennis to you back then, and what does it mean to you now?
I think the idea is phenomenal.
Yep.
Of team, but for me, it just wasn't, it wasn't part of my personal path. I think there's value in it, absolutely, but there was so much time that would have to go into that.
Yeah.
I didn't have. And, after the high school season was over, and I think Erin Sanders won it this year, that year.
That's right. Yeah. She was Ponderosa and then went on to play at CU. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And I played her first round in the tournament right after that. And
how'd that go?
It was 0-0, so it wasn't like, you know what I mean?
And listen, like, you and I both know that it would have been a very selfless move for you to go be a part of a high school tennis team. And I'm not trying to say anything less of Colorado tennis,
For sure.
but your path, your trajectory, I believe if you would have played 4 years, you would have won 4 state championships. That's my opinion. So nonetheless, you got to play Erin. You chose a different path. Yeah. And, when it came to that moment again at 16 where you're like, you're on this path and then you get burnt out, how in the world did you get the courage to pick up the racket again to keep going?
Well, at that point, the recruiting process for college had started. So I had all these, schools, emails. Things were different back then, of course. There were a lot more rules in terms of contact. But one of the main people that was recruiting me was Amy Jensen at University of Denver at the time. And I had told her, we were a little closer. Our relationship, I think, was a little different during the recruiting process. She was very real. She never put up any sort of front. And yeah, I told her, like, I don't know if I want to play anymore. And this was over a phone call. And she was like, well, I need you to hold on to that thought and put it on the back burner for a little while. I was like, okay. And then a week later, she resigned as the head coach at DU, and she called me and told me, and she's like, I'd love to coach you full-time pro bono. And she became my coach.
Yeah, that's another small world because I worked with Amy up at Evergreen Sports Center. Her and Sarah Stone. And I also was victim to playing Amy Jensen in mixed doubles. She was a 2-time national champion at Cal. Just had a different level of net awareness and hands that I'll never forget. But nonetheless, a phenomenal coach, and she took you on full time. So I'd love to have you speak to that time that you spent with her and maybe kind of some of the defining moments that prepared you for the recruiting process.
Man, she changed my life. She was fantastic, so caring, selfless, and she's the one that took my head out of the game and allowed me to see the game differently because of focusing on bettering myself, bettering my mind, not worrying about how I'm hitting the ball, but worrying about what I do between points, how I'm thinking before a match, how I'm thinking after a match, and how I compete. And that allowed me to end up hitting the ball better. Wouldn't you know? But she changed my net game. Like you said, she was incredible at the net, and just her understanding of doubles in the net game. That's what was a huge part of preparing me for college tennis, was the doubles. And I felt so comfortable and confident because for hours and hours, it wouldn't matter if we spent 4 hours on court together or one, she was there for the long haul. If we needed to stick to something, working on something, she would do it however long. So I remember practicing for like an hour, kick serve and volley, first ball at the net over and over again. And just the transition to the net made me so comfortable from doing that. And it was just having her believe in me, and it was incredible. And working with her for, I think I started with her May and then played hard courts in August, and I had great results.
So part of your junior success was 3 national championships, a bronze ball, a couple silver balls. Would you say that time with Amy allowed you to be playing your best junior tennis at that point?
I think with Nick Saviano when I was younger, I played my best then. And then with her as I got older, definitely played my best. And going into college at Vanderbilt, she's the one that helped me kind of set that next level foundation.
And I want to talk about recruiting process in schools, because I know Vanderbilt is where you started and then eventually transferred to Baylor, which we'll get into. But what schools were interested? Was the mailbox big enough for all of the letters of interest? Because, listen, I'm sure that there was a lot of opportunity to go to several different schools, and I would just be curious to fold back the curtain of what schools you were considering during that time.
I was a weird kid because I was interested in academics and tennis, and if I liked the coaches, there was something about, I didn't care much about like the status of a school.
Yeah.
I would say, my top 2 were UNC, Chapel Hill, and Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt came into the picture like a little bit later, and in the process. It was right at hard courts when they really kind of were all in.
Now, I believe UNC Chapel Hill, Sarah Anderson played there. She was another Colorado local, right? Okay. So I wasn't curious how many Colorado people went there to play tennis. You probably had to be one of the shorter few that were on their list of recruits. But okay, so UNC, and then who else?
I loved the coach at William and Mary at the time, and that program was growing a lot. Illinois was super interested. Honestly, I don't remember a ton about back then. Tennessee offered me, Alabama, SMU was interested, TCU.
Yeah.
I mean, and DU too, Jeremy, who took over after Amy. He was fantastic. And I really strongly considered DU because it was home and it was
good academic.
Academics.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because I don't know if you've seen it recently, but they've finally built legitimate indoor tennis facility for them, and it's also funded by Denver City proper, so they have a lot of inner city stuff that they do through Denver Tennis Park. But that would have been a neat spot. But nonetheless, you packed your bags and you went to Nashville at Vanderbilt, and I know that you had success right out of the gate. What in the world was it like playing number one singles and number one doubles as a freshman in college?
Well, I had no idea what I was doing because I was a freshman. And I just what was great about me at that time was I didn't think about all the intricacies of how should I say this? Status on a team, like upperclassmen, lowerclassmen. And I just went in, oh, we're the same. It's a team.
Yep.
So we all want to be great so the team can be great. So I came in and I was always doing extra work, always extra serves, always whatever, extra workouts. And in the fall, I did really well. And I was just kind of thriving. I didn't have pressure because I was a freshman, low expectations. I didn't go in to college thinking, well, I'm going to play number one. This is what I want to do. I was just happy to be at Vanderbilt and be on a team that was great. I didn't think about, like I said, any of those things. I didn't think about, what spot I would play or anything like that. So I think just taking all that stuff out was what helped me have a great year. And I think kind of adjusting the team rules was a little difficult for me because sometimes it was kind of bullying because I was a freshman. And so that was very hard for me because I was a sensitive kid and didn't understand it.
Yeah, and I believe what you're getting at here is the stigma of you're a freshman on a team.
Yes.
And there's seniority. And I mean, you use the word bullying. I'm going to use the word hazing. I've seen just about everything. And I think one of the communications I listened to that you had with one of your players when you were at Georgia State was just about, I don't care if you're a senior, I don't care if you're a freshman, we're one team. And if you're a freshman and you have leadership, go lead the team, go be the voice. And I think that that's just so beautiful. And it sounds like you picked up on that pretty quick at Vanderbilt, that if and when you ever had an opportunity to coach a team, that it's always one.
Yeah. I just think, no offense to coaches that are okay with it, I think it's bull.
Yeah.
Honestly. And I'm not going to tiptoe around that. I think it's important that, don't get me wrong, freshmen need to have their role, getting balls, carrying balls to the court, filling up water jugs. That's normal. And that's what we do. But, making them do certain things, or like you said, hazing or bullying just because they're young. And, that's what I told every team I've coached. I was like, I don't care what you've done in the past or what seniors did to you. We're not doing that. That's unacceptable. So it works for some teams, but I'm just not good with that. I think we all, need to treat each other with respect, no matter how old, how young you are, because there have been so many examples of seniors who don't lead by example. So you have no room to talk about how things should be done on the team. You're not in the right role to be talking down to anybody, period.
Right. And to finalize that is these types of conversations that are happening, or these types of moments, we're all so impressionable, especially at younger ages. And when those things happen, it might seem like a little thing to that senior, what they're doing to a freshman, but to that freshman, it could be life or death for them. It could be literally the point of the crossroads where you felt at 16, hey, I don't want to play tennis anymore. Like, every time I go and my teammates treat me like this, like, we are that impressionable. So I believe you, as a coach and a leader of your team, I tip my hat to you to unify, to find ways to use the years of leadership in the team to have that pay forward to the kids coming in and the kids coming in to push the people that have been there a while. I think it's how it should work. And, maybe after that year at Vanderbilt, you saw an opportunity to find a new path, a new journey, and tell us how you came across Baylor.
Well, I was actually at Vanderbilt for 2 years.
Oh, it was 2 years. Okay.
I was not given a really great option of transferring after my first year, because that back then you could put caps on things.
Okay.
Like you have to release. I would have to get a release as a player to contact and a release to transfer from coaches.
Little different than today's transfer portal, huh?
Very, very different. Yeah. And that's okay. But yeah, my experience was just different. So I ended up hurting my shoulder. I tore my labrum at NCAAs my freshman year. So the whole summer I kept playing, but I was like, this is really bad. And so my fall sophomore year, I didn't play at all. I kept trying to get cortisone shots. Nothing helped. Did MRIs. Obviously, I had a torn labrum and there was a lot of scar tissue, and there was definitely a mismanagement there. I played the spring season serving underhand. It was very ugly. I still played like 3 in the lineup that year, but it was I think that year was harder for me than the first. And it got to a point where growing up, I was always taught to be very respectful of authority, and they're my coaches, do as they say. But me kind of keeping quiet and shutting up, it reached a certain point. And did I make a mistake with how I handled it with my coach? Yes. But I think there were a lot of things mismanaged, and it was for the best that it happened. I think there were lessons learned on both ends there. Yeah. And going to Baylor, I went on a visit to TCU, which I actually signed a GIA with them.
Okay.
And then I went on a visit to Baylor, and I enjoyed my visit there more, and I changed my mind. That's the truth. And went to Baylor. I was very transparent about my shoulder. Right when I started summer school at Baylor, I had surgery the next week.
Oh, wow.
Because they were like, this is shredded. Your labrum's shredded. Because I couldn't lift my arm up.
How long was the recovery on that surgery, Alex?
It was supposed to be 8 months. Yeah. And I ended up, so that surgery was mid-July, and I ended up starting to play in January.
And how was that coaching experience, team culture? Did you feel like you had a fresh breath of life with that experience?
Yeah, it was completely different. The culture within Baylor athletics as a whole was completely different. Standards were different. It was athletics. Like how we see it now, it was like that back then there. It was just a different level. And everyone, I just remembered when I was walking around campus, just everyone was all the athletes were so locked in and intense and just all about being professional. It's not that Vanderbilt wasn't. This was just a different level, and I just loved that. It was great. Definitely thrived in that environment. It was so hard. Everything was so tough there, and we had a coach that was very tough on us, and I learned a lot from him with team culture. I think one big thing I took from Joey at Baylor was character development meetings.
Yeah.
We would have conversations. He would pick like a video. We would watch a video and dissect it, and it could be Michael Jordan or LeBron James. We would talk about, he loved basketball. He's a huge like Celtics fan.
Okay. Yeah.
So we would talk about basketball a lot. And that's kind of when I fell in love with the John Wooden pyramid of success. Like you saw, I love leadership.
Yeah, love it.
That's kind of where it really started for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
going back to kind of how we started our conversation, is we really have a choice when we have bad experiences. Mm-hmm. If we have a bad experience with a coach, we either just get ourselves from that bad situation and never face it again, or we take that, learn from it, and create a different narrative if we're ever given the opportunity to coach or lead a team. And that's what I've resonated with in our conversation thus far. And Baylor, as you wrapped up there, I mean, 3 Big 12 championships, tremendous success again. I would love to real quick talk about your extended education, because you and I both know it's already hard to be a student athlete and to get an undergrad. I understand you have a master's degree, doing that while you were coaching, from my understanding, but I would just love to hear what was your passion to continue your education after Baylor.
So I actually started my master's at Georgia State, and it was January of 2020. And so it took me so long to muster up the courage to apply and just do it. Because in my head, I'm just creating these stories that weren't true. Like I'm too old, I'm too this, I won't have time. Is it really going to matter if I have a master's degree? And, after conversations with my mom, she's like, just do it for you. And that was it. And so I started January 2020, right when our spring season started that year. So it was just like a lot, but, crazy enough, that's when COVID happened that season. And we ended up going to online classes, and just COVID helped me really focus on that part of my life, the academic side, because I took 3 summer classes the summer of 2020. It was insane. I don't know how I did that, but it helped me kind of graduate a semester early. So I'm so happy I did it. And if there's anyone listening that's questioning whether they should do something or not, just go for it, because if you fail, it's fine, because you went for it, and you might find a passion rooted in the failure. You never know what could come out of that. And it's worth it. It's always worth investing in yourself.
Yeah, the old Winston Churchill quote, failing while maintaining your enthusiasm and continuing to push forward is when you become truly successful. And I think it's admirable what you did. And I'm sure as a coach, your players looked up to you for not only coaching them, but also being in the trenches of the classroom just like them. Would you say that would be the case?
I hope so. Some of them made some comments, that they thought it was cool, but yeah. I think it's important as a coach to always set a standard and never get lazy and rules for thee, but not for me kind of thing. Like if you're telling your players to do something, but you're not doing it, it's not great.
As a coach, and as someone that is recruiting for your team, I am unbelievably curious on what you look for in players, because you've played at the highest level collegiately. You've played at the highest level as a junior. You've been around some of the greatest tennis players in the world through your academy experience. You've seen it all, but you've also talked a lot about the character traits that are important to you. I just would love for you to walk me through and describe an ideal recruit that you're looking to play for your team.
Ideal recruit would have to love competing, have a passion for the game, like truly love tennis and fighting, and just love being out on court, win or lose. I think the family dynamic is very important when I recruit someone. Their level of interest in academics, because being a student athlete is about doing well in both areas.
Yeah.
And just respect. Do they speak to me with respect? one of the worst things for me, and this might not be for everyone, but if I get an email or a text and you say, hey, it drives me insane. Hey, can you do this? Hey, have you seen this? I emailed you. There's just certain things now that are just, people let it go because, oh, they're just kids. Well, that needs to change, and our job is to help them understand how important it is to have a high level of self-awareness and character and really good communication skills, and especially with authority or older people. And I don't think we should lose that. But yeah, recruiting's very hard. And I've made mistakes. I've found also diamonds in the rough, but it's harder now. It's been harder not being able to go watch players, budget cuts. I think a lot of coaches have had a hard time. So they're watching YouTube videos and really short phone calls and, language barriers. They're with international players. I think there are a lot of challenges we face when recruiting, and that's why you have to do your due diligence, because the transfer portal is insane. There's so many kids looking to leave all the time. And you wonder who, is it our mistake? Did we not do our job? Is it they get bored, like I mentioned, or do they just want something new all the time? I think it goes both ways.
And I mean, when I played college tennis, it was 4 Americans I played in 4 years. Everyone else was an international player. So I'm just curious, are most of the recruits you're talking to international players, or do you still try to dive into the national bucket as well?
Yeah, actually, Queens is the first place I've really focused on Americans.
Awesome.
Because Americans have focused on Queens.
Okay, there you go.
And it helps to have a beautiful school and a beautiful place and high level of academics. There's a good mix here, but I would say they're more right now. It's half and half. Gotcha. The team, and I think it's very important. There's a lot of value to have that diversity in a team, because you need to learn from one another. You need to be around people that are different from you. And I think that makes you a better person all around. There's a lot of value in that.
I got one last question for you, Alex. I am taken back by your journey, and I think it would be important for the listeners to understand, based off of the perspective you have now. You've been through a lot. You've seen a lot. You've licked your wounds. You've persevered. You're about to have an awesome wedding here in a couple weeks. I am just so impressed by your resiliency through your journey. And I would love to know if you had an opportunity to go back to when you were 16 years old and go to a coffee shop in Littleton, Colorado with the 16-year-old Alex, knowing what you know now, and sitting down with him and giving him a quick words of wisdom on how to approach life, what would you say to yourself?
I would say ask questions on how you can become better every day, but don't question yourself based on what other people say. I think that growing up, I was such a people pleaser, and I just wanted to, I lost focus on what I really wanted, and I just wanted to please everyone. That helped me on my journey. Will I make them happy if I do this? What will people think if I go there to school?
Yeah.
Will people look down on me if I make this choice? So I think it's important to ask questions about where you want to go in life, but not question who you are because of your choices. Like, did this make me a bad person? So I think everything in life is a choice, and ultimately you have to make it. No one's going to make it for you, and you have to live with it. There are definitely things that I would go back and handle a little bit better. Like, for example, my time at Vanderbilt, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the coaches there.
Yeah.
They were great in their own way, but for me, it just wasn't a great fit. I needed something else. And that, what they have going on there is phenomenal, and they've done so well, and players fit there. That's why there are options for schools,
Right.
and coaches are all different. And I think it's important that during the journey, you make your choice. And if it doesn't go the way you want it to, just make a different choice. Don't kill yourself over a mistake.
Wise words, Alex. And I am grateful for the transparency. I'm grateful for the vulnerability, and I can see why players want to play for you. And I just wish you continued success on your coaching journey, continued success in life. And I can't thank you enough for joining me today on the BTB Project.
Thanks, Coleman. This was awesome. You're the best. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Such awesome advice from Alex in today's episode. And there's so much to take away as the listener to understand the importance to never question yourself. There are so many situations in life that are going to challenge you, that are going to push you to the limits, that are going to make you question who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. But as you heard, when you're able to persevere, when you're able to take a step back and say, I'm going to do this for me, I'm going to go after this, I can do anything I put my mind to. What an awesome message from Alex. If this episode inspired you, give it a share. Share it with a friend who needs that same self-encouragement, that needs that motivation. We're all in this together. I'm proud of each and every one of you. Thanks for taking a listen, and take care.
You're told I'll be a hard temptation.